We need like a little duty.
So let's just pretend it was like the loose leaf.
My name is Jasmine Bruce.
I'm Chloe LaFleur.
Welcome to Loose Leaf.
Welcome.
And thank you for joining us.
I have my coffee here.
I got my Free Fast Sprite.
As we are getting this podcast rolling, I'm sure we're going to make mistakes, especially with
Yes.
quality. So just bear with us.
It's a new endeavor.
Yeah, as our trailer came out like 5 hours after we were trying. Yeah, Jasmine and I met in art class in high school. We're both artists, and we've had very different journeys in becoming the artists that we are, but where they're different, they complement one another. And I think that's what makes our friendship so strong.
Originally connected over art, and then, as we both went off to college, our separate ways, but then reconnected over artwork again in the community, and still at it. So with Loose Leaf, we really just want to explore our identities, your identities, the worldly identities, and see how we can heal through that also with our art.
I also think that this year for Jazz and I has been very formative, and though we have our differences and struggles, we are ultimately, like, we have each other to heal with one another. Like, we're not alone. It is nice to just like nice to
share
have
that with someone.
Just to share it with the community, and also to be able to share these conversations where other people can learn and maybe not be so afraid to have these types of conversations. And also, a lot of people that have inspired me, that comes from them sharing their stories. And when I see people being vulnerable and sharing their stories, I think, well, if they're strong enough, like, why can't I be? So to be able to provide that for the community and for other people out there that might not think they're strong enough and whatnot, like, I don't think I am either. So, but, like, I'm just trying to rush out here. We're in this together.
So for this first month, February, it's Black History Month. We really just wanted to take time and honor and celebrate not only Black history, but Black culture. This first episode, we really just want to focus on kind of art as activism and being able to use your artwork to address these social issues and heal from that.
On reflecting where you were last year at this time, from what you've told me, how far you've come, the opportunities that have manifested, and how you've been able to use them to build the community in this like unlikely ways, which is really, really cool.
Yeah,
Inspiring.
I think like 2020 really seems like a time that people slowed down and hopefully went internal a bit to do that own healing.
I really want to focus today on how you being a local Black artist has brought a lot to healing. Was there a moment in this past year, you often talk about how Element 7 came to be, even before that, when you were just given certain opportunities. When did you notice or kind of realize you were fulfilling what you're supposed to be doing? Was there like a moment or something specific?
I wouldn't say it was a moment, but it was definitely more just like gradual over time. Starting out with my artwork, so I went to GV for art, fine arts, and I emphasized in illustration. After graduating, I really just like wanted to find a way to continue with my artwork because I do love it, but like I was lacking a lot of intention with it. And I think too, when you lack that intention and purpose, it's really hard to find traction and like really get up and commit and find motivation. Because it's like... That
makes so much sense, because I always compare, especially now I have personal art things that I want to do. But when I think about being just in art school and the amount that you're expected and the turnover to like just have these massive projects done in days.
Yeah.
And you can do it because you're also inspired and you have a purpose and whatnot. But when you leave that and you're in this realm just as an individual artist, it's so hard to find that responsibility and the discipline and just the inspiration.
So I think, it was definitely gradual for me to figure out what was that spark for me, what was the intention, what was the purpose. I wanted to keep myself busy, so applied for this project called Rad Women A to Z. And that was one of my first public art projects. I worked with Lions and Rabbits. That's when I first met Hannah Berry.
You just met her last year. That's crazy.
Well, it was technically 2 years ago now, 2018, right after I graduated.
Okay, nice.
So then the next year was Windows.
Got it. Oh, okay.
No.
Well, so 2019. And then...
And that's when I first really got connected real world like arts community in Grand Rapids, one of the biggest things is finding those connections.
Yeah, it's all about who you know.
Yeah, and then when you're on the ground too, like really like doing artwork outside. So we painted electrical boxes all around downtown, highlighting women in history. And so when you're out there, being able to talk to the community is like such a big part of it, because you have people walking past and asking you questions all the time. And so as I began to get more opened up to those experiences, I kind of found like, oh, there's intention and purpose here, because I can be able to share the story of whatever I'm painting with the person that's walking by, and you wouldn't normally have a conversation with that. So I just kept getting involved. So after electrical boxes, I felt more motivation to really just get on the street and use my art in that way. So I started getting involved in like more public art like that. And after I was connected in that way, it was a bit easier. So fast forward to next summer, and
which was 2020.
This is 2020 now.
Yeah.
It was a crazy year, as we all had experienced and still are. Tensions were high, and then you had the murder of George Floyd and
Breonna Taylor.
What
was it like in Grand Rapids? Because I wasn't here.
Yeah, I forget that you weren't here.
Yeah.
It's like you just came right after. It was, everyone was just, you had all the anxiety from COVID and the shutdowns and
the videos.
But yeah, so just like high anxiety as it was across the world.
Even just like walking down the street type of anxiety.
Oh yeah, just like going to the store was like, oh my gosh. I think that a lot of that anxiety brought up a lot of other traumas, right? Mm-hmm. So with like that pain and like not really sure what's going to happen, you kind of, I feel like, almost go into this survival mode.
For sure, absolutely.
And I think that, people are a lot more sensitive, and it kind of dug up a lot of feelings and voices that people haven't shared before, that they finally felt
they were
like a perfect the space to. Yeah. And also, like, if what, fuck it, like, what do we have to lose now? Maybe it was sort of that. I've always been, I think it's also important to share, like, I'm a biracial woman, and so it's something that has always been a part of my life. I don't have a choice whether I want to.
It's your shirt that you're wearing.
Yeah, it's
not just a month for you. It's every day.
It's every day.
Yeah.
I don't get the choice, and so, but I do get the choice if I want to speak up on it. And prior to this, I really never. I don't want to say I never did, but I didn't feel comfortable like I had the space, or even I had the right to. And so it was really amazing how I was able to find this group of people through Windows GR, and then feel like I had that space to discover my identity and do that through my artwork.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, it was. I didn't even know it was happening at the time, and even the year before, I was trying to get a collective together, and it just didn't really work out. And then all of a sudden, just this whole volcano erupted, and these people just fell in my lap.
Right, and I feel like that also just speaks though to your spirit. What you're putting into the world, and being grateful and truly just trusting the process of you gotta admit I think I know what's best for me, but
trust.
If the world knows something better, I'm just gonna trust that, even though it's really kind of scary. I'm still really learning that. And then once you make it to a certain point, you look back and you're like, wow, I just really cool. It's really
trusted without I think that my word of the year last year was definitely trust. And I was terrified going into, actually saying something about police brutality and taking that stance, which, is looked at as political and extreme and radical to say that, Black lives do matter, which is just absurd to me.
It's already most basic you could possibly get.
Human rights.
Yeah.
And people still find ways to get offended by it. We'll definitely be talking more about that in our other episodes. Just as far as, you know, that whole movement goes, and the stigma of Black, heat of police brutality.
Yeah, how that was extreme.
Yeah. And then Breonna Taylor, she's from Grand Rapids.
Which I didn't even realize, dude, until, like, I did some of the mural for her, and I'm like, it's so disappointing.
You don't know who Breonna Taylor is. You need to know. Because there's a street now in Grand Rapids named after her.
And it's so sad because it's one that just caught wind of publicity. Mm-hmm. There's so many.
Right, yeah, that's such a good point. There's so many victims.
And yet it's still controversial. Mm-hmm. So it's like, yeah.
And people wonder why people are upset about it. Yeah. And it's like, you have to realize that racism is not gone. And it looks very different than it did, 100 years ago.
And I mean, that's a whole other discussion of the civil rights movement, how it never ended. It was just silenced.
Right, yeah.
Because personally, I was raised to believe, I mean, I was never raised to believe it was gone or it was here, whatever. Mm-hmm. But I just had the feeling,
right?
Oh, like that, cool. Like that was
you
that.
Learned about it. It was in the past.
Yeah, and like no one thinks like that anymore.
No,
you know,
no, right? But then you have to think, MLK, that was not even like 60 years ago.
I mean, it's crazy when they do those stats that are like, this person is as old as this person. They're like a celebrity and then like a dead, like iconic figure, and they're the same age, and people don't realize that.
It's a lot closer to us than we. Ignorance is bliss, and I think that this summer a lot of people woke up again and realized, like, hey, people are still upset about this. There's still inequality. There's still
and
justice that needs to be served.
And there's not anything wrong with how we were raised, in that you can't fault us, but you can fault us when we learn about it and then don't do anything.
Right.
Like once you know you're responsible and you have a responsibility.
Yeah.
So, and like, it's just a shame that even people of color are raised not to think that either.
Yeah.
Which is really telling.
And I think that this summer I was like, no, like, I need to do something.
Yeah.
Like, I do care about this, and I'm realizing that my ignorance is just as much hurting the issues of inequality as it is not helping.
So when those GR came to be?
Well, prior to that, I was creating a memorial. I guess that's where I kind of started. Memorial mural on Lions and Rabbits Gallery.
That was before Windows GR? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it was
that's crazy.
It was, so you have the protests kind of pop off beginning of June.
Mm-hmm.
So I was down there for those, and then Hannah was like, hey, I want to do something. Do you want to paint on my windows? We're not open right now, so like paint whatever you want.
Right.
So I was like, okay. So decided to do a memorial for victims of police brutality. And this was really the first piece that I tried to figure out, okay, how do I address this, and how do I shed light on these people and bring, attention to this issue in a positive way. So yeah, I created several portraits of victims, including George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Sandra Bland. Oh my gosh, the list goes on.
Yeah.
Botham Jean, and several others, and just like embodying that. I could not fit them all on this portrait. And so,
it's a big portrait.
Yeah, when you're using your artwork in this way, you have to think, okay, how am I putting these images together to say what I want to say and get it across? I ended up titling it "Break the Cycle," because I really felt like that was the issue at hand. Like, there was this constant cycle of this white superiority and these people of color that continuously want to rise up, but get pushed down and oppressed over and over again. And I was like, okay, like, how do you break this cycle? How do you break the cycle of oppression, of these people dying, of these people getting murdered? And so I did that, and wondering through my artwork and through my colors, and what colors do I use to show the dark parts and the light parts. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the background, I focused a lot on the landscape. So I started with actually like a burnt down kind of like post fire, deep, like forest that was all burnt down, and just black trees and stuff that had a little sprout growing up from the dirt. And so, like, with that, I just had the idea, like, sometimes, because they say when the forest fires actually leaves very nutrient, sustainable ground, or I'm using, like, the wrong words for...
We went to art school.
Words. Like, leaves a lot of nutrients so that new plants can grow up. Anyway, do not quote me on that. It kind of relates to, in order for change to happen, right? Black futures don't exist in the world we live in today. And things and systems have to be destroyed in order for that to recreate. And
I feel like we've talked about this too, but it's like the anger that is like ancestral, it's generational, it's passed down.
Right.
And then you look at history and what you have to do to make change, and it's never like there's always violence, there's always a war. And so then people are shocked when you're upset.
Right. Like, what? The audacity.
It's the audacity, So
so it's like, how do you
break that? Like,
it looks like destruction. It looks like fires.
And it doesn't have to be that way.
Right. It doesn't.
No.
But people continue to just ignore the issues at hand. And it's like, and then you wake up the next day and you're like, wow, I'm just so sad. Like, why did you have to ruin, like, my beautiful city? And it's like, no, you're not getting it. Why did you have to ruin my entire ancestry?
Right.
And, like, our entire culture that I have no idea.
That you have a month to honor your history for.
Right.
That then, like, it's just like a month. It's not just a month for you.
Right.
And I feel like even that just speaks to the superiority of, like, the white race, because there's diversity. And so that means that there's, like, an alpha and a beta. The beta being just anyone to add it to be diverse. Whereas there has to be a constant denominator, which is white people.
Yeah.
It's,
I think if it was all equal, you wouldn't have to have a diversity and inclusion, like, sector of your business. No. It's because it's never been equal.
No. I also think that right now what the scariest part about all of it is that not only is it dangerous to be, against it, which is just for literal equality, but just being complacent and complicit.
Just going back to, like, the destruction does have to happen, unfortunately. And the protests that happened in Grand Rapids, as so across the whole nation, they did end up violent. They started, though, I was down there that Saturday before, so peaceful. And then you have, the people that come out around the nighttime, the people that didn't even start with us, but ended and showed out for, media and stuff. It's heartbreaking that this beautiful movement gets lumped with just the leftovers and just everything bad. And again, that goes back to how media depicts Black people just as criminals and as violent people.
The rhetoric.
Right. So it's no surprise to the people sitting at home are like, oh, right.
There it is again.
Yep, right, there they go again, kind of thing. Putting this in here too, protests do matter. And I don't care how much and I sat back and said, oh, what's that gonna do? But it gives people space. You have freedom of speech to say whatever you want, no matter what the protest is for.
It's really a beautiful thing, like when you're with other people.
Right, it's the community thing and feeling affirmed by the person that's a stranger walking next to you. To say, hey, you're not alone. Like, I know, like, several of those I went to alone. And it was also surprising to, see how many of my friends just didn't go.
I went to some in Savannah alone. But, that's the thing, too. Like, when you go, it doesn't matter if you go alone at all. Nope. We're all there for the same reason, and that's what brings us together.
And I hope that for the people that don't go, maybe you're doing something else.
We do have a responsibility.
And just show that in some way, I think, is that what we're trying to get across. Again, we're saying protest with your artwork, right?
Yeah, there's so many ways to do it.
If you feel some type of way about something, but you don't know how to address it, you can do that with your artwork, and I think that's really what Windows GR, which we'll be talking about in a sec, that was a project was really born. this movement over the summer.
So how did you find healing specifically within your Break the Cycle?
As I was painting it, I met people in the neighborhood that were coming around. I met some people that even knew Breonna Taylor. I gave people hugs. And it's also like during COVID, but like it's like it just, there's something about someone walking up to you just in tears, and you can do nothing but just give them a hug and hope that, you know, really helped them have a better day and helped them to feel
you're breaking
like,
the cycle.
Right, you're actually physically breaking the cycle. And that just gave me so much joy in my heart to feel not alone. I think that's really where the healing comes from, and to feel affirmed by the community, and to hopefully, you know, extend that love and gratitude to someone else. And it was also obviously fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's beautiful. If you don't know,
thank you.
If you haven't seen it, you should go check it out.
Still up there.
Yeah, it's so cool. So cool.
Yeah, so then it all happened pretty fast. Protests turned riots on Saturday. That week, my colleague Hannah and Guillermo Sotelo, which is another artist in Grand Rapids, got together and were like, hey, can we paint these boarded up windows downtown? So several of the businesses downtown were just destroyed. I didn't go down there actually to see all the wreckage in the morning, but you know, if you went down there after, there was just glass shattered everywhere. It's like a spray paint everywhere. Like it was almost comical.
Honestly,
it was almost comical to like people to be like, oh my god, and you know, it was amazing to see our community too to come out and like help clean that up. Yeah, but it wasn't just that. It was like, well, we can clean this up, but we should not cover it up.
Right? Yeah, we're not going to pretend this didn't happen. We're not going to just sweep this under the rug.
Yeah. So like, how do you continue that story and make people continue to
look at it and read it, you know?
Yeah. And so we were like, let's paint these boards. And Hannah with the connections got us plugged into Downtown Grand Rapids Incorporated. They were able to help us fund over 200 artists that we sent out a call for to paint these boards downtown. There were over 300 boards painted. Basically, after those two kind of figured out the logistics behind how everything would work, Hannah reached out to me because I was obviously already working with her. And then Leandro Lara, Kendall Redman, Adrian Butler, Eric Lachey, and then one of the last people that we needed like one more came in last minute was Asia Horn, which shout out.
She's gonna do our intro.
Yes. Anyway, she knows that too. She's an incredibly amazing person, and I was really inspired by that first meeting we all met. I think that was like a Thursday. It was like literally Wednesday they had the idea. Thursday we were on a Zoom call. Friday we actually all met in person. So cool. Quick. And those kind of things you have to act on quickly, or else you're gonna lose the opportunity. Yes, because someone else will take it and someone else will cover it up in in the way that the narrative is different. Yeah. So it was really important for us as artists of color in our community to act on that. So yeah, a lot of us met that first Friday. And I met Asia that first day, and she just like had this energy that day. It was I can't even describe. It really, after I went home that day, my body was just like shaking with energy because I, for once, she really just let out this pain and anger from like just the core of her stomach that was like, no, like we're angry and we're upset. And we have the right to hear our voices, hear what we have to say, and like help us break down these systems. We always system. cycle. Yeah. But and there was this concern too of like, who do we ask to paint? What's going to get painted? And there was kind of this preconceived idea that, well, we have to ask everyone to come paint. And she was like, no, this is the chance for artists of color to share their voices. So, if you want to help out, come volunteer, pour paint, do this. There's so many other things. Yeah, so many other ways to serve. And for a lot of us, including myself, I was like, no, like, we can't do that.
Right.
Like, that's, like, not right or something.
That's exclusive. Yeah.
Right. And, like, you guys are not getting it, basically. Yeah. And so that was a really, really uncomfortable conversation for everyone there.
Even the first time I heard that story, I didn't get it.
Yeah.
But it took, like, probably, like, a couple times to hear it. And it wasn't until, like, a couple weeks ago when we talked about it with another thing. I was like, oh. Yeah. Yeah. Because I always agreed with it because, like, I don't really have a place to voice my opinion.
Right.
It's not,
but, like, you really, it takes a bit to really understand it and absorb it. And like I said, after that meeting, I wasn't understanding it, and I went home, and my body was just like, I knew it was there was something coming up that I had to grasp and understand, and I slept on it. Woke up the next day, and I was just like, I get what she was saying. Like, this is our time to voice our opinions and voice our feelings as Black people in our community, and it's just. Sometimes you have to be able to take a step back and just, like, sit back, because you have to think.
Yeah, this is...
White people are always put on a pedestal, and I love to use that bar graph scenario where, you know, this one bar is super high, and for Black people, the bar was always this low. And people are just expected to get their own opportunities and resources because, like, well, you're equal now. Right. Here you go. But we were never given the
it wasn't
ingrained. To do so.
And I mean, this country was, like, built on the oppression of Black people.
Yeah,
so
and then you're just expected.
You think it's gonna be gone over like just things getting more modern? You know,
people are just expected to get to where. Other people are in terms of success. Without the history, without the resources, without the opportunity, without the connections, with
the
nothing.
System just set up against them and thinking that, now it's present. It's not,
And so when we finally want to be like, hey, this is how I feel, it's not an offense.
You're in the wrong?
Right. It's not an offense to the other side.
No, it's not
saying
personal.
that, hey, I'm trying to make my bar higher so I can actually finally be equal
saying
with
I
you.
Just matter.
Right.
You know?
And that's when the whole, Black Lives Matter thing comes in and people are offended by that. It's like, no, we're not saying that other lives don't matter. We're saying, like, hey, I matter for once. So, yeah, it took a second to absorb that. You know, this is a space for us. This is our time now, and it's okay for you to just sit back.
Was there any retaliation, like businesses? Or,
oh, my gosh.
Like, what was the response you had?
Yeah, it was incredibly hard. I was surprised. I know the people we were working with were surprised. There were several businesses, so we obviously had to get approval from the businesses / building owners to be able to paint on their boards. Since the boards weren't technically owned by us.
Wait, were they owned by GR?
I think Rockford Construction actually put up all the boards that were downtown.
So, just, like, separate, but could they have also... just giving you access to paint anything you wanted, Rockford Construction, because they were their boards? Or did it still have to be specified by certain companies depending on what property it's on? Since
the boards were on the buildings, we would have to got permission, but they also could have had the power to be like, you can't have any of these boards too.
Okay.
Because we've had that kind of issue come up.
Really?
We were so far into the project. It was the sort of thing that... The company could have chose to been like, okay, you can't have these boards after you're done, because it was also like, what are you going to do with these paintings when they're done? But that would have came back to the city as far as and back.
Did they try to?
It was brought up, if we had permission to have these boards after and do what we wanted with them, because either the business paid for them or they were paid for by Rockford Construction. Yeah. So it's like, but for them to take that away from us would have been a very bad move on their end. I mean, that's being very forward that you don't support Black lives.
Yeah.
So noted, we were able to take the boards after. But amidst it all, it was such a challenge to get approval for some of the things that our artists wanted to paint. Some things as simple as, like, I want to paint a portrait of a Black person, or I want to paint, a fist that's of a person of color. And some of these paintings quite literally got painted over while we weren't there. or taken down. The board's just taken down. And in some situations, I think it was Michigan First Credit Union. I'm not going to be afraid to call out these people.
Say the names.
Yeah. It was a lot of the CWD owns a lot of buildings downtown. We had to get approval for every painting that we wanted to put on their buildings. And I remember there's one experience with an artist. She created this really beautiful painting of a fist, and next to it there was, these heart hands making a heart. And then the city of Grand Rapids in the middle, and it was a super great painting. And that one got to stay. But the one next to it, I come by or I got word from CWD that they did not want that painting there. They didn't approve it.
The hand heart one or the fist?
The fist one.
Okay.
Yep, that was right next to it. And so I was like, okay. And my hands were tied in that scenario because there was instances where I was like, okay, and tried to convince people that it's okay to put this there and it's not political.
Which that in and of itself is very traumatic.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I remember just going by, like, we were going to find a way to replace the board so we didn't have to cover up her artwork that she spent, all day working on. Some artists spending all weekend working on. And by the time we got there was this lady just spray painting over this beautiful artwork. And we were like, well, hi, like, what are you doing? We just want to open the conversation.
Should you paint over both of them? The heart and the...
just the fist one.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
and I was just like, I just want to open up the conversation. Like, who said you could paint over this kind of thing?
Right.
And she didn't want to have anything to talk about. Just gave us dirty looks. Like, didn't...
Did you get her name?
No. But yeah, just didn't want to have the discussion at all. And that's the ignorance coming out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a lot of scenarios like that. There was one scenario with some kids that hadn't necessarily gotten approval to paint on a certain wall yet, but someone sent them there, and the business owner came out, and they kind of got in an argument about, like, hey, are you supposed to be here or not? And he threatened to call the police on, like, these high school kids. And it's just like, God. Wow, the
audacity.
The frustration.
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from, but do you understand where we're coming from as well? Can we have a civil conversation about this?
Yeah.
And why is it bothering you so much that we want to paint a portrait of a black person on your wall?
Yeah, just think about that for, like, a minute.
Just really absorb that.
Right.
And it's really heartbreaking. We had people... just bystanders shouting racial slurs at some of our artists. It was really tough a lot of the time. I think a lot of people see this beautiful, beautiful project that, it was amazing, but...
It was also paid for by pain,
know?
Like,
right, yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It's not a good...
It wasn't
like, it's not like you wanted to have to do this.
No. But we had to.
Yeah.
And even, like, I heard someone say... oh, I've never seen this many black people downtown. And it was like, why is that?
Yeah.
Do you ever wonder why is that?
Yeah.
And it's like, what, we're here.
And also, why doesn't that bother you?
Right. And it should bother you. Because it bothers me when I walk around and I don't see people that look like me, especially during Art Pride. And how, obviously, I did that one year and just... There's just no one that looks like me that's a part of it or comes down to see your work.
Yeah.
And it's like,
again, think about why.
It's like, how do you invite more of my community in here and make more space for artists of color?
And the fact that you have to go out of your way just speaks to the system again and just emphasizes the cycle.
Yeah, and why we have to continue to use our art as activism. And we're continuing to create platforms for artists of color in our community and get each other connected, because most of us were like, why? You've been here the whole time. Like, why don't I know you?
It's so cool.
We're now in the Grand Rapids Public Museum permanent exhibit.
I saw him last week.
Yeah. So you can go down there and check them out, which is really, really amazing. So from Windows GR, STEM My Team Element 7. My collective helped to sell these paintings that came from Windows GR in our online auction/event. So that was called Open Windows, which was one of our first events that we held as a collective, Element 7. We were able to hold it in Rosa Parks, which was super awesome because you always go to Rosa Parks when you're younger, and that's just like where all the events are, right? You never imagine
the Times Square.
Yeah, it is the Times Square of Grand Rapids. It really is, and you never imagine that like you get to actually host your own event. Yeah, so that was really cool. Just kind of a check mark in the bucket list. But we were able to just continue to highlight Black voices and artists. Yeah, local DJs, local spoken word artists. It was different in the way because Asia really wanted to curate like an experience, and I know that like we'll only go up from here. But we had a few of the painters from Windows GR come paint on like these glass panels that kind of mimic windows.
So cool.
So it had a really cool visual effect to it. Awesome. And if you want to check out more of the Windows experience and stuff, you can go on facebook.com/WindowsGR. We also have Instagram, which is Element7, spelled Element SVN. Just a little promo there.
Promo.
But with that auction, we were able to sell and raise over $7,000 that went back to local artists. And I did forget to mention too with Windows GR that maybe I did mention it, but we funded over like $20,000 to local artists that we paid each person to come down and paint the window, because that was like of our utmost concern was to make sure that we were putting money in pockets.
It's amazing.
So yeah, it was just really cool to just tactilely help people in the community.
Yeah.
And just to see everyone come together because no one has literally been to a concert in a year.
Yeah.
And so you could see everyone just wanted to come out and dance. It was so much fun.
Dude.
I was exhausted with joy.
The best type,
Yeah.
Tired. No, I just actually walked by your mural the other day.
Did you?
Not the one I held the projector for, but your Harriet Woods Hill mural. So you should just talk about that.
Harriet, my girl. So, Harriet Woods Hill, I was commissioned by DGRI and working with Lions and Rabbits also to be a part of a project called Women's Way. So, Women's Way was held actually in honor of Women's Month, but it took such a long time for the project to get approved that it didn't happen until July. Also including the protests, which slowed down a lot of things in terms of safety. When I was supposed to start the mural. So the mural that I was given, there were 4 different ones that were spread out around downtown, commissioned and painted by local artists, including myself. Already said that. And so the whole idea with this project was to really highlight women in history, and specifically local women in history. So I was lucky enough to get to paint a mural of Harriet Woods Hill. She was the first Black female officer at Grand Rapids Police Department. I believe that was in like the 50s or 60s. So you really have to think that was not long ago at all.
No.
And
that
considering
says enough,
considering the times we were going through with all the protests, being a woman of color, then painting a woman of color on the police station, that was just like really, there was a lot of hesitation in my heart. I needed to like rethink through where my heart was and what felt right. And
why? What was the hesitation around?
I think because I didn't want people to look at me in the way like, oh, she supports police, so she must be against like her own people kind of way. And when I say that out loud, actually it kind of seems like super irrational, but
it's interesting. I don't know, 'cause it's not a perspective I would automatically assume.
Yeah, but I think that goes with too when you say Black Lives Matter. Oh, it means that you hate police.
Also,
right. Like that's really not the case at all. We're just trying to get justice for these lives that were murdered.
Right. Exactly.
So I feel like when you show support, maybe of police, that kind of
takes away from the other.
Right.
And people, don't realize you can do both in a way that serves everybody.
Yeah. So I really had to work through this of like, okay, I want to continue to build bridges and not burn them, right? Again, with saying that, I'm not saying that I'm against police. I'm saying that that whole system needs to be revised, right? So we can be protected and not killed, because that's what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be keeping us safe. Kind of revisiting my hesitation was that I came to the conclusion I really want to continue to build bridges instead of burning them. And so by doing this, I want to honor Black lives where that honor should be due and hasn't been due for several people, including Harriet. Her family actually still lives in the Grand Rapids area. We did a documentary after the whole mural. It was just amazing to research about her, learn about someone from my community that made a difference, and know that her family is still around. We got to I didn't get to meet them, but we got to include them in the documentary, and her son actually spoke on it. So it was really, really awesome, and kind of actualized and humanized that was not that long ago that a woman of color wasn't allowed on the force. But she overcame many obstacles throughout that career, and it just inspired hopefully other younger girls.
Well, it's just like anything else when we see someone, like when I saw Hillary Clinton run for president. It's just like it's just breaking another ceiling. And like, it's just this one, I feel like, because it's in our hometown and was like 50, 60 years ago. I mean, all of it is upsetting, but this is just so within reach,
it like seemed really tactile, right? The fact that she was the first in Grand Rapids. So that's
her son.
For
our parents. Like, what were some obstacles that you had to overcome as being the artist for that mural?
I think the biggest one was actually painting on the wall.
I was wondering about that.
And having 4 cop cars pull up next to me in the middle of the night. That was like definitely terrifying.
You were never alone, right?
No. And that was also the thing, like I couldn't be alone just for my safety. But that was quite wild because this was probably the second night I was painting. I had an entire scissor lift there. I'd clearly been there for a day before, projecting at nighttime because you can only project at nighttime. Right. And I think I had 3 other friends with me there to help, one helping, and so the second night, and there's a camera right there, so like they would have seen me painting before. But anyway, all of a sudden 4 cop cars pull up, 2 on one side, 2 on the other side, and I'm just like, you get that feeling in your stomach that's like, oh my god, I did something wrong. Like, you're trying to make sure that you're not doing anything wrong, and then that just makes you look more like, and especially considering the times and what had just happened. And thankfully I wasn't alone. I felt safe in that way, but it was just, absurd because they had no idea the mural was going on. They came up to me with just suspicion to begin with. Oh, what are you doing here? Did you get permission to paint? And I'm like, no, like I'm just painting an entire mural on your building, and I didn't get permission. Like with a scissor lift, literally,
like do the whole mural on the police station wall.
But I had to give all my information and this
everybody?
And this and that. No, just me,
just you.
And then they called back up to the chief or whatever, and we're like, is this supposed to be happening? Blah blah blah. And I was just like, you can literally ask the chief of police. He approved it. Well, apparently, the people in charge decided that it wasn't important to let the whole force know or anything. So
serious?
Nobody knew. All the people that pulled up didn't know. As it went on, after that experience, it seemed like the communication got across to the rest of the force.
That's good.
And there was awesome people that came around and was like, thank you, this is awesome.
That's great.
And we're just really encouraging and loved the mural at the end of the day. So it was, again, a really hard, uncomfortable experience, but it really taught me a lot of strength and courage and to not be scared and to really walk, what's that? What's the name they say?
Walk the walk?
Yeah, walk the walk and I'm not just like talking about it. Like walk the walk and talk.
It's talk the walk.
But it's like I don't know. It's actually participating in the actions and being dynamic and actually doing something.
Not being complicit.
Yeah.
Just watching. Just not standing by and watching.
So although it was uncomfortable, it was an experience, and I'm really happy that I get to share with everyone and tell them Harriet's story, because
it's so cool.
She needs to be remembered, and I hope that, and actually that street, that alleyway, we had it so we could take back the names of these women. Mm-hmm. So the alleyway, it's right on the west side of the police department if you're ever downtown. It's named Harriet Woods Hill Way. So that's pretty awesome. That's so cool. And we'll be doing more of those murals this year. So
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So I guess that kind of concludes our conversation on Jasmine's involvement for art and activism, her placement as an artist here in Grand Rapids, and the incredible change that we are all lucky enough to be witnessing.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah, it is incredible.
I think that anyone listening to, just know that if you're an artist or whatever your practice may be, know that you can make a change. And that sounds super lame and corny, but it's true. Like
just keep pursuing.
Yeah, trust yourself, trust your passions.
Put your energies where your intuition is leading you. And
put your energies where your intuition is leading you. I like that.
Yeah. But yeah, so that concludes our first episode, I'd say.
So we're going to be putting out a few more podcasts for Black History Month. Next week being the Stigma of Black and the negative connotations that kind of go behind just literally the dictionary definition of Black.
I'm looking forward to the conversation.
I am.
To learn more too.
Thank you so much for listening to
yeah, don't really know how to get out of these things.
Bye. Don't say just to use your mind.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Stop worrying about it.
I'm worrying about it, so I'm just saying it more.
I know.
And every time I say it, I'm like, it's the end of the world. Okay. I'm just going to start over.
Okay.